In today's tutorial, I will show you how to use API League to discover new APIs for your next side project. This is what the final result will look like once we have everything set up. Using one of their APIs, we will be able to extract all of the text content from an article. Once we pass in the article's URL, like you see here, we can just hit send, and in the response, we will now see all of the text that's part of the article. Just before we begin, I do want to mention that API League is sponsoring this video. To get started, we can go to the API League homepage. Once you're on this page, just click My Console to create an account and just go ahead and sign up for an account. Once you're signed in the top right, just click My Console, click Profile and API Key, click Show and Hide API Key, and just copy the value that you see here. We will be using this later. Now I will show you how I made the API call earlier in this video. Clicking on APIs up here, we can now see a list of all the different APIs that API League offers. Scrolling down, just click on Extract Content API. Here, we can read all the info that we need to know about this API. This is the URL we need to make the GET request to. And down here, we can see the required parameters. To start making this API call yourself, we can scroll to the bottom and just copy this curl by clicking the copy code button here. Open Postman, create a new request, and just paste in what we just copied. The only change we need to make is to add our API key, which we can do by just typing in API-key and then paste the value of the API key that we copied earlier. I will use a variable here, but you would just type in your actual value of your API key. So if your API key was 123, you would just type it in like this, but I'm just using a variable right now. Once you added that, we can now click send. Looking at the response, we should now see the extracted text from the article that we passed in here. The next API I want to show is the Search Books API. Going back to the API League website, if we scroll up and click on Search Books, we can read more info about the Search Books API that they offer. Looking here, we can see all the different query parameters that we can pass in to filter the different books that we want to search for. Just like before, we can scroll to the bottom and copy the curl command. Open Postman, create a new request, paste in what we just copied, add our API key just like last time. I will change the query, so instead of books about wizards, I'll type in Harry Potter instead. And I also want to change the number of results that we get back. So we can specify number, and in this case, I'll just put 20. Going back to the documentation, we can see that number is a query parameter, and the default number is 10, but we can specify anywhere from 1 to 100. Also, if you wanted to be more specific, you could just look through these query parameters and pass in what you need. Once you have everything set up, we can just click send to make the API call. Looking at the response, if we scroll down to the books array, we can now see all of the books that we have now searched for using this books API. The next API call I want to show is the Search Restaurants API. Going back to the documentation, you can read more info about it here. Looking at the parameters, we can see all the different things that we can pass in. Just like before, we will just copy the curl command, open Postman, paste it in, and just make sure to add our API key. The curl command already had some values for the latitude and longitude, as well as the distance. Looking back at the documentation, the latitude and longitude was already specified, and so it will start to search for restaurants around these coordinates. And a distance of 5 means that it will only search for restaurants within a 5-mile radius of these coordinates. If you wanted to find restaurants in your current city, you could use a website like this, where you can type in your city name and it will give you the latitude and longitude coordinates, which you can then use to paste into Postman so that you can start looking up restaurants near your current city. Once you have everything set up, just click send. Looking at the response, we now get back a list of restaurants that fit our criteria that we passed in. And we can see things such as the hours that the restaurant is open, as well as the name of the restaurant, the type of food that they serve, as well as other restaurant related things. The last API call I will show is the Search Icons API. Looking at the parameters, we can pass in the query that we want to search for. If we only want to use public domain icons, the number of icons that we get back, as well as our API key. Just like before, we can just copy the curl command down here, add our API key, hit send. In the response, we will now get back URLs of different car icons. So if we click here, we will now see a car icon. This is just some of the many APIs that API League offers. So if you ever need new ideas for your next side project, then this could be a great resource to help you figure out what to build next. That is the end of this API League tutorial. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe for more content.